Let's talk about Mitch McConnell right now. Let's talk about the senator from Kentucky who's running for re-election this year. Now, when you're a senator, anytime you're a senator, but you're also a Senate Majority Leader, you always and you're an incumbent, you always have a huge advantage over someone who's running for the first time against you. You have an entrenched political system in your state of donors, chambers of commerce. All of those things are just, it's an entrenched machine. That's why it's very, very rare for a senator to lose. Okay, it's very rare. So, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell seems like he was all but a lock. Well, a major upset could be brewing down in Kentucky with some huge national implications. Now, of course, he is running for re-election this fall, and we do know that there was a candidate placed there right now to run against him, and we'll get to that in a second. But Mitch McConnell has been causing quite a furor right now. I just see in the comments here, right here on the channel, how angry many of you are. Many of you from Kentucky, who I asked before the show this morning, how many of you are big Mitch supporters down there in Kentucky? And overwhelmingly, you said no. So there's been this ditch Mitch movement for a while. But the problem is, when you're an incumbent and you are the Senate Majority Leader, good luck. And that's why the Democratic Party has really put up candidates that are kind of laughable in Kentucky, because they don't really stand much of a chance. But there's been a growing movement, growing sense of urgency about this pandemic, and a complacency from the Senate on the fact that they're doing nothing. You know, Bernie Sanders called it the do nothing Senate yesterday. He's fired up against the leadership, and there's a lot of discontent among Republicans even, and Democrats about the leadership in the Senate. Listen to Bernie Sanders yesterday. If you missed it, it was great.
They see an economic meltdown, and many of them are asking what the Republican leadership here in the Senate is doing. Crisis after crisis after crisis. And what is the leadership here in the Senate doing? And tragically, Mr. President, the answer is nothing. Nothing.
Nothing. What is the leadership here doing? Nothing. And as I pointed out to you just a few minutes ago, these talks are delayed until the end of July because there's no urgency from them to pass another stimulus package, to have direct assistance to the American people. The focus, of course, is on business, which is incredibly important. But when so many people are facing massive evictions right now, unemployment, healthcare benefits, all of these other things that Americans rely on, and they're going to go on vacation, that obviously not sitting well. Well, there might be an opening in Kentucky now. So Democrats have poured tons of money into this state. On the last time McConnell was up for re-election, they ran a high-profile challenge from Allison Landrigan Grimes. I'm sure those of you who know Kentucky politics know about this. And I watched this closely. I interviewed her back when she was running. It fell flat. It was a total disaster, and Mitch won. He won by 15 points, and Democrats poured a ton of money into that campaign, trying to unseat Mitch McConnell. It didn't work. He crushed her by 15 points. And there was some simple mistakes. And one of the biggest, most glaring mistakes is that she was trying to distance herself from President Obama, who was not widely liked in Kentucky. But she couldn't even answer this simple question about whether or not she voted for him. She sat down to do an interview with the editorial board of the paper, and when she was asked about that very question, she just danced around it. I want you to listen to the laughter from the editorial board reporters in the background when she can't simply answer this question. Take a listen.
Did you vote for President Obama, 2008, 2012?
You know, this election, it isn't about the president. It's about making sure we put Kentuckians back to work.
Did you vote for him?
I was actually in a way a delegate for Hillary Clinton, and I think that Kentuckians know I'm a Clinton Democrat through and through. I respect the sanctity of the ballot box, and I know that the members of this editorial board do as well.
So you're not going to answer?
Again, I don't think that the president is on the ballot as much as Mitch McConnell might want him to be. It's my name, and it's going to be me who's holding him accountable for the failed decisions and votes that he has made against the people of Kentucky.
But I can't answer that question. I won't be answering your question of whether or not I voted for him. Come on. No wonder she fell flat. It was a total disaster. So is history repeating itself down in Kentucky? Because now they're running, Democrats and Chuck Schumer just decided to basically run another candidate just as bad as Grimes down there in Kentucky. And right now, Amy McGrath, just another cookie cutter strain of Democrat that's going to stand no chance of winning down there. Now her, one of the things from the last cycle was her family's military career from the last cycle went viral. But she's been a really rigid candidate. She hasn't been good so far. And specifically, when she was asked this question, I'll show it to you in a second, about what she's been doing with the protests. Has she been involved with all of the Black Lives Matter movement? Has she been out there? Has she been connecting with constituents and the people? I'll get to what she says in a second. But there's a person that's emerging right now in Kentucky that could really push, and it could be an unstoppable force, given the current climate that we're in. So take a look at Charles Booker, who's been emerging right now. He's risen in so many different ways. He's never played it safe. He couldn't. He grew up in poverty, low levels in the West End, a personal victim of street violence that claim members of his family. He's a type 1 diabetic. He even had to ration his insulin to buy food for his family. This is what the editorial board has talked about down there in Kentucky in one of the newspapers. And he's been out in the community, and he's been a rising star. And there's a Democratic primary in Kentucky could have Charles Booker move in the front and then even become really a national symbol of what this movement would mean. Can you imagine Mitch McConnell being unseated by him? So here's just an example of why right now this is looking more and more likely. If you read these tea leaves, you start to see what's happening, unfolding across this country right now. Mark my words, this could be a moment in Kentucky. Look how Amy McGrath was asked and answered that question about going out and being among the protesters. Take a listen.
Protesters the last 3 days, or in Lexington or elsewhere? Ms. McGrath.
I have not.
And why?
Well, I've been with my family, and I've had some family things going on this past weekend, but I've been following the news and, and watching and making sure that, I think we're in the middle of a pandemic. So we also have to look at, is that the place to be right now? So that's really why.
I stand before you as your brother, as your cousin, as your neighbor, as your fellow good troublemaker. My name is Charles Booker.
So that was a campaign ad that's going viral. So it shows her sitting there saying, I haven't. I've been watching it on TV though. I haven't really been out there. And then you cut to this video of him in front of this big crowd saying, hey, I'm in this fight with you. So could we see a movement down in Kentucky? I'm just saying pay attention to this. Pay attention, because you get a feeling in politics. And a lot of times politics meets a moment. And right now we're in a moment. When you see Mitch McConnell taking vacations, no urgency from the Senate Majority Leader to pass another round of stimulus, to do anything other than really to protect himself, focused on liability protection right now and filling judge vacancies. That was the first thing they did when they got back from their break. So it's going to be interesting to watch in Kentucky. Will the Senate Majority Leader meet his match at a moment in history? Yeah. Anyway, just keep your eye on that space. I'm curious about how that's going to unfold. Again, there he is, Charles Booker. I didn't know much about him until I really started researching him, and he's a fascinating individual. And I'm not saying one way or the other how I feel about him. I'm just saying I love watching these big forces, because a lot of times you have these senators who think that they're untouchable. They've been there for so long, they've been there for so long in this state, and they're like, I'm untouchable. I saw that growing up in Pennsylvania. I saw that as I traveled this country. I saw these senators who'd been just part of this machine, so out of touch, so in a bubble, so removed from the people. Will be interesting to see. That is Kentucky politics this morning.